to the not real estate cellar. We actually climbed out of the cellar today, and we're here at Florida Atlantic University with Dr. Ken H. Johnson, the Associate Dean from the College of Business. Welcome to our show. We normally call this the real estate cellar because we do it in studio. But we're not in studio today. We're climbed out of the cellar, and we came here to visit you to talk about what is going to happen with this market. Everybody wants to know. And because you're a data scientist and you have all these housing indexes here, we came to find out what the experts think.
Sure, glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. All right, so you have several indexes that you compile. Tell us about the buy versus rent index.
Sure, so I do a buy versus rent index with a couple other professors, Dr. Ellie Bra and Dr. Bill Harden. They're down at FIU. We've worked together for years, and we look at 23 cities around the country, and we compare, is it better to buy or rent in these 23 cities? It's very much like Case-Shiller. The overlap of the metro areas are about the same, but the difference is we're comparing buy versus renting in those cities in terms of which way will create more wealth on average.
Okay, so what is the number one city in those 23 cities that you
Number one in terms of renting, or number one in
Well,
terms of
the
owning?
one where it's the best to buy over rent.
The best to buy over rent, believe it or not, is Honolulu, Hawaii.
Really?
Yes, but you still pay a significant premium to live in Honolulu. And a lot of what's going on, we believe right now in Hawaii, has been the difficulty of getting to Hawaii or moving to Hawaii. And the rental market stayed relatively strong, and the housing market has been backing up.
Okay, so transportation, getting goods there, getting building material there. Getting building material everywhere has been a problem.
And particularly in Hawaii.
So, yeah, so I could absolutely see that. Where is it best to rent versus buy? The opposite, the exact opposite.
I think the best place to rent versus buy right now is Dallas, Texas. We're about to do our new data run, so it comes out quarterly. Dallas is always high. It's probably number one in terms of renting. When we look at Dallas, we look at Denver, Colorado, and we look at Houston, Texas. Those are really strong cities in which you should rent in. And the unusual thing about those three metro areas is that they mostly did not experience the crash in 2007, 8, and 9. They were hit relatively less. Everybody had some downturn. These cities had minor downturns. It was almost just a hiccup in Dallas. And it's almost as if the market has a knowledge that, well, we've lived through this before. It wasn't that bad. Just keep buying. And we can overprice. So they're the most overpriced markets right now in terms of buy versus rent.
So everyone is saying that Miami has become just the most unaffordable market in the country. Is that true?
That's not true in absolute terms, the actual dollars you have to spend. But when you look at Miami in terms of ownership, and by that we mean Miami, Broward, Palm Beach County in terms of ownership, it's relatively high in terms of a premium. In other words, where prices are compared to where they statistically should be, we measure that difference and we measure that as a premium. Now, keep in mind, incomes haven't changed that much. They change slowly. So as prices run up really quickly in the Southeast Florida area, and it's not the highest, by the way. Boise, Idaho is the most overpriced in the country. But as prices run up rapidly and you see incomes stay relatively the same, that relative measure of the premium becomes important because it's very expensive relative to your income to live in Miami. We're at about a 27% premium here in Miami. Currently, compared to in 07, 08, that number was more like 79%.
Wow.
So we are overpriced now, but nothing like we were 12, 13 years ago.
Okay, so we were more overpriced
Absolutely.
before 2008 than we are right now. So we're in better shape. Well, at least Southeast Florida
Southeast Florida, most of the country's in better shape than it was. So we were paying premiums around the country, but almost market for market, not every market, but almost market for market that we look in, and we have an index of top 100 U.S. housing markets, and this is just simply pricing. And when we look in those markets, the premiums they're paying today are not as high as they were.
We have the New York State Multiple Listing Service, and it is absolutely always insane, the pricing in New York, in Manhattan. So when people say things like, Miami is more expensive to live in than New York, I look at the actual prices and go, that's not true. So what you're saying is it's based on history or trends
Correct.
of what have been true in the past.
That's correct.
And it's not necessarily like apples for apples today, dollar for dollar.
That's right. The absolute most expensive market, and I'd have to go look this up, it's either San Francisco or New York. So, but it's,
Yeah, that always goes back and forth.
it's that relative change, though, as you see people, and it's not all New York, but a lot of people like to make this comparison, and they're mostly thinking people are leaving the city, right? And so when someone in the city is thinking about relocating to Southeast Florida, the rents they're paying are much less. The price they're paying for homes are much less, and that's only accelerating these moves, not only from New York, but many places in the Northeast, Midwest, where people are seemingly that part of the country is moving to Georgia, Texas, Florida.
Okay, so you're going to acknowledge the migration.
Yes.
Okay, I've actually read somewhere, the pandemic didn't cause migration. And I remember thinking, well, what load of crap is this? Because there is no way that this pandemic didn't spur high amounts of migration. So you're an expert on this. Tell me, migration, did we see a lot of it during the pandemic or not?
Absolutely. We saw two types of migration.
Okay.
One is permanent, which I think the pandemic just accelerated what was already happening. So, but when whether it be right or wrong, Florida was much more open in terms of how you could go out and interact in an economy or go to dinner, go to the beach, et cetera, than most other parts of the country.
There was more freedom in Florida, no doubt, than in New
So whether
York.
that be right or wrong, you saw more people come to Florida. I think that's absolutely true. And they came here permanently. We also have seen, we believe, a significant amount of temporary relocation. So if I'm in New York, Philadelphia, Chicago, and I have to work from home, and I have to work in my apartment, and I can't really go out of my apartment and do anything, I might as well work in Fort Lauderdale.
Right.
I might as well work in
that.
and so, but when those offices open back up, and perhaps they'll even still be at a work 2 days a week from home, well, but you can't live in Fort Lauderdale and commute back to Philadelphia. So we think there'll be a number of people that will be moving back, but they almost certainly relocated here on the rental side, not buying. The permanent relocations that we would have witnessed would have fallen mostly in the ownership. They came here and they bought.
Right, okay. I've seen that as well. And I've seen that the Hudson Valley, which is just north of New York City, where I am from, and I have property there still, is still very hot. And I think that because people know that if they're going to have to maybe work 2 days a week from New York City, they'd rather live in the Hudson Valley and just drive to the city a couple of days a week than live there. Because what I think the pandemic caused a lot of people to want more space, more land, more acreage.
I think that's true. And you're seeing that all over the country.
Yeah.
And this makes sense. So you should see suburbs or reachable areas from the city, from Philadelphia, from Chicago, from many parts of the country where, hey, I can commute in that one day. It's not like I'm doing it every day or those 2 days a week. Otherwise, I'm going to live at home, and I want to have my home flexible enough that I can work professionally from my home. So I need the right amount of bandwidth. I need the right atmosphere. Such as I don't have my dog barking in the background.
Exactly.
I've got to soundproof my office. Several things they have to do. So you're seeing this surge in surge is the wrong word. You're seeing a change in the type of demand that people have for homes. And what homes look like 5 years from now will not look anything like they did 5 years ago.
Yeah, I agree with that, and we're seeing that a lot. But you mentioned Boise, Idaho.
Sure.
You said that is the #1 most overheated market. Why?
Because of the population influx. Boise mostly escaped the downturn, like several of the other cities did, a few of the other cities did around the country, the last downturn. There's been this huge influx in population. This has been going on even pre-pandemic. And so we've seen prices run up significantly. And again, they're pricing above where they historically should be based on a history of prices. So this is back to that premium measure.
So when you say that premium measure, does that mean that the people who lived there, who owned, who maybe bought in 2012 or 2015, made a greater profit, theoretical profit, because if they haven't sold yet, but in their appraised value at any rate, than people in less overheated markets? That's what we're talking about, really, right?
That's absolutely true. But one of the downsides to that is if you sell and you remove your profit, if you will, take your profit right now.
If you realize it.
That's right. Where are you going to live?
Well, I mean,
You might change
Go-
you might change markets.
you know, pick up and go somewhere cheaper or move into a rental and
Well, and then that's a problem because the rental markets are all overheated right now. So if we abstract away from Boise here in Southeast Florida, while our premium's pretty high on our prices, on our rents, it's some of the highest in the country. So you just can't. And again, in terms of a premium, it's a game of musical chairs. If I sell my house, what do? Do I go rent for a while? I might not be able to find a rental unit. If I get out of my rental unit, can I go find a home to buy? We're inventory constrained, and that's the Boise question too. That's the Boise story too.
that's if you want to stay in Boise.
That's correct.
Right. So if you want to take your profit and go because you think the market is going to tank and you want to cash out now and you're ready to go, hey, I can retire on what I just made on my house. Let me go out and live in the sticks in some cabin and buy a piece of land and or live in a mobile home or whatever. People could really cash out right now and they could migrate more to the rural areas.
People could, and you probably will see a pattern in this, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's not going to happen next year. We'll wake up in a decade, in 2 decades, and realize America's becoming a more rural society again. And not that they're living on farms, but they'll be going to the Topeka, Kansases of the world, where they can sell in Boise or sell in Florida and move to Topeka and have the same internet connectivity and be just as productive professionally.
Ken, you told me you were a real estate broker.
Yes.
And do you have any advice for agents right now?
Sure. So when I was in business, the one thing that I think I was really guilty of in terms of not being best practices was I didn't diversify my business. I concentrated very heavily in selling property, either 2 or 4 people. And I encourage real estate brokers today because there's this big transition between rent and reinvest and own and build equity. And we're seeing the balance is slowly but ever so certainly beginning to favor renting and reinvesting. So if I was back in business today, one of the things I would definitely be doing would be having property management be part of my business portfolio.
That's a great idea.
I want to
make
sure that I'm managing some number of properties, if not just my own, but others, because this will help me ride through any sort of downturn, and it does not really impact my upturn when I can sell and make commissions.
And it keeps revenue flowing at all times. That is such great advice. Property management. And I know some people, I heard one lady say she'd rather chew off her arm than do rentals, but I don't understand that because it's quick, it's easy money, it flows, it keeps coming to you. I totally agree with that 100%. That is great advice. So thank you so much for that. And thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
I enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you for joining us here today at Florida Atlantic University, the College of Business. If you enjoyed this discussion that we had with Dr. Ken Johnson, you can find out more information about the indexes they compile and all the information and research that they do on Go Home TV. On MyStateMLS.com, go to the Go Home TV section and look for the article.